I'm Chris Glover. A father and son facing terrorism charges appeared in a Newmarket court today. Yesterday, the RCMP announced the pair were arrested while allegedly in the advanced stages of planning an attack on Toronto. Jamie Strachan is on this story for us. And Jamie, walk us through what happened in court today.
Well, Chris, the first look we had at this father and son suspects, they appeared in court today, each separately, each via video. The son appearing first seemed bewildered and confused. The one chance that he did have to talk, saying, "I just want to say all of these charges against me. I didn't do anything." He was then told by the judge, "This isn't the time to talk about evidence." A long way to go for him. No lawyer yet. He's been told to apply for legal aid. That has to go through a process. He's going to come back to court on August 7th. Both men being held, Chris, on what's known as a reverse onus, which means they need to prove that they should be granted bail. So it looks like they'll both be held for at least the next little while, at least until August 7th and likely beyond. The father appeared about an hour later. When he had a chance to speak, he stressed that his son, Mustafa, had nothing to do with anything that was going on. Both men required an Arabic interpreter to hear what the Crown and what the judge was saying. Both will come back, Chris, on August 7th. Hopefully at that point they've taken some steps to retain legal counsel. That will be kind of the next step before any kind of formal bail hearing can be done here in what the judge said is obviously very serious charges both men are facing.
Certainly. And Jamie, such a scary story for so many people in our region. But what else have you learned about this alleged plot?
Well, we heard from police yesterday, Chris, that this was an imminent attack that was seemingly, thwarted at the last second. The men were arrested at a hotel in Richmond Hill. Sources tell CBC that they, had just recently filmed a video pledging allegiance to ISIS in front of an ISIS flag. They were brandishing an axe and a machete. They were charged with conspiracy to commit murder on behalf or in aid of the Islamic State, or ISIS as it's more commonly known. Police wouldn't say what particular community was being targeted, but there's obviously been a number of communities under a lot of stress and scrutiny across the Toronto area, especially since those October 7th war began in Israel. What we also know is that the father was charged with aggravated assault based on an assault that took place outside of Canada, Chris, back in 2015 in support of ISIS. And it's that charge that is really attracting a lot of attention today. The RCMP originally said yesterday to reporters that both men were Canadian citizens. I pushed them on that. Some sources were telling me different, and they backtracked, saying that the father was a Canadian citizen, the son, in fact, not a Canadian citizen. But many wondering how the father was able to re-enter back into Canada and live here for the last 10 years. One of those people, the Conservative government's public safety minister, asking that very question of the government, how was Mr. El-Didi allowed to come back to Canada after that alleged 2015 incident and apparently live here right up until his arrest? There's questions, did he travel? Where did he go in the interim? All of these questions remain on the table and really, require some answers from the government, from officials involved in this case. But I think it's important to note here, it's very much at the beginning. Neither of these men have lawyers yet. There's been no bail hearing yet. We're a long way from hearing a fulsome disclosure of the evidence that was gathered, and really what was a brief investigation for a case of this scope. It began at the beginning of July and culminated this past weekend with the arrests at that Richmond Hill hotel. Chris?
So many unanswered questions and so many chilling details as well. Jamie Strachan reporting for us. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Taking you now north of the city, where a 26-year-old man has been charged with second-degree murder in connection with the death of a Markham woman who was kidnapped last week. The search for Yin Zhang took investigators to the village of Kirkfield, about 140 kilometers northeast of Toronto. The search near that small community was prompted by the sighting of a white van allegedly belonging to the accused. Now we know investigators actually discovered human remains in the Kirkfield area on Monday evening. And today, police officially confirming the body was identified as the missing 57-year-old Markham woman.
Now that these remains have been identified as being our missing person, Ying Zhang, we've been able to proceed with the investigation, and with consultation with the Crown's office, second-degree murder charges have been laid. Ms. Zhang's body was placed inside a green dumpster and then taken out with trash and dumped at the side of the road.
Zhang went missing from her workplace last Thursday. Investigators believe she was assaulted there and suffered a serious injury. Shanglin Yang was initially charged with kidnapping, forcible confinement, and aggravated assault. Those charges have now been upgraded to second-degree murder and indignity to a body. Toronto police have announced arrests in a $1 million fraud investigation. The alleged scammers were able to compromise cell phones of more than 1,000 people across the country, costing telecom companies, banks, and individual people. Tyler Cheese has more from police on the charges and how you can protect yourself from this sort of scam.
A SIM swap scam is a type of account takeover fraud that generally targets a weakness in two-factor authentication and two-step verification.
Toronto police say they've arrested 10 people and are still looking for 2 more in relation to a SIM swap scam that affected more than 1,500 cell phones.
In this scheme, individuals compromise an unsuspecting victim's cell phone by switching the SIM card associated with the account, either by impersonating the customer at a cell phone store or otherwise gaining access to the account.
SIM fraud has become increasingly common in recent years, but how exactly do scammers get access to your phone?
They're able to convince the telecommunication companies that they are in fact the customer that they're going after. They will then use that customer's information, bypass security, and then they'll take over the phone number and tell the communication company to transfer the phone number of the affected customer over to the SIM card that they possess. So from the victim's perspective, all they see is SOS in the top right-hand corner of their phone. So what that means is there's a SIM card in their phone and it's not transmitting any signal.
He says that can happen if you're in rural areas away from cell towers, but if you're seeing it in the city, that's a red flag. Once in, the scammers can access all kinds of information from any of your accounts.
I consider it even worse than somebody getting access to your bank card or the credit card information, because that is still limits that person to just one account, but here the range is quite wide. Experts say if you think you're being targeted by scammers, you need to act quickly. If at all you end up being in that situation, move very, very fast. Just call your service provider that, this is happening. Just put a block on this number, and try to be vigilant if you notice any suspicious activity with your bank account, your email, or anything like that. Just start disabling those passwords or credentials. Police also say scammers often target victims with a lot of information online, so they're warning people to be extra careful with what they post publicly. And they recommend anyone who thinks they might be a victim of this kind of scam contact them or the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
The city is raising fines for more than 100 parking offenses starting today, including parking in a bike lane or path. It's all in an effort to create safer streets. We spoke to cyclists for their reaction to the move.
The fine for not paying your TTC fare, which is $3.25 last time I checked, and which harms no one, is about $425. So the disparity between what people who drive and people who take other modes of transportation incur when they commit infractions is quite disturbing.
That's good. So we can the cyclists can use the lane instead of turn around.
The changes come as Toronto grapples with what's been a deadly year for cyclists. 5 people have died so far this year, only halfway through the year, and already more deaths than any year in the past 10. In total, fines are increasing for 123 parking offenses. You'll pay $200 for parking in a bicycle path, and that's a sharp increase from $60. And if you park and don't pay, you'll get slapped with a $50 ticket instead of $30. The mayor today was asked about accusations that the fine increases are just a cash grab.
When you are parking illegally, that may even cost a life. or cause serious injury, you need to be fined. And it's $200 rather than $60. I don't apologize for that at all.
Still, the city says it could generate about $40 million in additional revenue from the fines. Prior to today, Toronto's parking fines were about 30% lower than other major jurisdictions in Canada. Complaints about coyotes have spiked since Canada Day in an Etobicoke neighborhood, with people saying they become aggressive towards them and their pets. Tonight, the city is holding a meeting for community members to discuss the issue. Nama Weingarten has more.
Etobicoke resident Donna Dismienko carries a horn when walking her dog.
My baby Dallas.
It's actually not unusual in this neighborhood, as residents deal with coyotes that have taken over their park.
I was coming out of the park, and right there at the catwalk, there was 2 coyotes just standing there, staring at us. And luckily, I just ran to my neighbor's house. I know you're not supposed to run, but I did.
So that gets a little intimidating. So as soon as you pull on the street, you're kind of like, yeah, I need to stay in my car or beat my horn or chase them down the street so I can get back into my house.
A man and his dog were attacked in a neighborhood last month. Citywide, there were 27 service requests made to 311 involving coyotes in July, compared to just 1 this time last year. The city says the coyotes that lived around West Dean Park over the last 6 years appear to relocate to Princess Margaret Park, and it's unclear why they became more aggressive. But regardless of the reason, residents want this resolved.
Maybe break up the den so that there can only be, maybe they'll move on somewhere. Unfortunately, I think it's a lot about just how Toronto's moving, right?
According to Toronto Animal Services, unless the coyotes attack humans, they're not considered a public safety issue. But they say removing them isn't an option.
You remove coyotes, more will come. So you will still have coyotes. They've been here longer than we have. And they'll continue to be here as long as there's green space.
If the coyotes do pose a risk to humans, Attard says the city would have to kill them. Now, if you have a coyote problem in your neighborhood, keep in mind to always keep your dog on a leash. Don't leave your trash lying around. And if you do see a coyote, don't approach them or feed them. Instead, the city says, make noise to scare it away. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
East to Whitby, and confirmation today that a new state-of-the-art hospital will be built in the coming years. Premier Doug Ford and Health Minister Sylvia Jones confirmed the location today during an announcement about the expansion of healthcare infrastructure in Durham Region. The province says it's provided $12 million in grants to Lakeridge Health so the hospital system can draw up plans to expand its campuses in Bowmanville, Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, and Pickering. Ryan Patrick Jones has all the details.
This expansion is part of an integrated and truly regional plan to provide people in Durham with more connected and convenient care.
Premier Doug Ford says the province is funding the planning for a multi-phase redevelopment project that will see Lakeridge Health add 300 beds at hospitals across the region. This includes a long-promised new hospital in Whitby.
These investments are ensuring that residents of Durham Region, that people across the province have access to the care they need when they need it, closer to home.
The project will also double the capacity of the Bowmanville Hospital. Pickering will get a new post-acute care center, and the province will look into expanding the Ajax Pickering Hospital later in the process.
Lakeridge Health provides care to over 700,000 residents at 5 hospital sites and 20 community health centers. And our government is ensuring Lakeridge can continue to meet the needs of Durham's growing population.
Durham Region's health infrastructure hasn't kept up with its population growth. It's expected to grow from around 750,000 people in 2023 to more than 1 million in the next 2 decades.
Not only will we be able to move forward with the planning for the hospital in Whitby, but we'll also have an opportunity to look more broadly throughout the Durham region, particularly in some of the gaps that we see related to complex continuing care and rehab.
Whitby Mayor Elizabeth Roy welcomed today's announcement. She's been pushing for years for a hospital in her town.
A trauma care facility, a neonatal care facility, but also an acute care and a cardiac care. So it's the services that have been required and needed for many years, and now we will have the supports here.
Lakeridge Health chose this plot of land near highways 407 and 412 as the preferred site for a new hospital back in 2022. But the planning didn't move as fast as Roy wanted. She launched a public awareness campaign earlier this year to pressure Premier Ford to get it done.
We're now at 2024, and there's been that lag where we just haven't had an answer. Now we have an answer. Now as a community, we know that we can move forward.
Whitby residents will have to wait up to 10 years for the hospital to be built. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Whitby.
And after a full month of celebrations in our city ahead of North America's biggest Caribbean carnival, the big event kicks off today. Of course, the major draw is Saturday with the big parade, but tonight is a special night. The King and Queen Showcase will get underway in a few hours, and our Anam Con is at Exhibition Place for us. Anam, you've been talking with some of the performers. I can see them getting ready behind you. How are things going there at the exhibition grounds?
Chris, this is really exciting. So this is the most anticipated competition of the carnival. And as we know, for years and years, they've held it at Lamport Stadium, but organizers tell me now they've outgrown that space. So they're expecting it to be real big this year. And for this competition, each band has a theme. And the King and Queens of the competition represent that theme. And I have with me right over here a king. His name's Kane Grant. And Kane, can you tell me a little bit about your costume? It looks so exciting.
So right now I'm portraying the lure and will of Iscariot. So it's actually going to represent the good and evil that we find in both ourselves as human beings, that sometimes you can good, sometimes you can get bad. So here we're just actually putting paillettes on, and as it goes up later on tonight, you'll be able to see that real switch in between the two personalities that we may have in our everyday lives.
Amazing. And I hear that your theme this year is unapologetic. What does that mean?
Unapologetic in terms of everything in life. You need to go through every day making sure that you're unapologetic to the people that you feel you need to be unapologetic for. There's so much things that we do in our day-to-day life that you should feel proud in doing. So be confident in what you're doing and stay true to that, and don't feel the need to apologize to some people.
And as I've come here like over an hour ago, and I've seen them put so much detail in each part of this costume. How much time did it take to make this?
Honestly, I say there's probably about 140 hours plus. We've been doing this since beginning of July. Long nights, especially the past 4 days. I think I had an hour of sleep today. So it's really a little hard time and dedication, but we get it done.
And it's heavy. How heavy is it?
Oh, roughly about 350, 400 pounds. So it's quite the task. That's a very, very long 4 minutes.
Okay, now I'm gonna go over to the designer over there. The mastermind behind this is his mom. Over here, we have Jamila, right over here, Jamila. She's the mastermind behind this. Can you tell me a little bit about your son's costume?
Sure. So he's playing the lure and will of Iscariot, which is exploring the way that we have to struggle every day to choose whether or not we're going to show our good side or our bad side, because it's within us all. And whatever side we choose, we have to be able to live with the consequences of that.
Amazing. And now while the theme for this particular costume is unapologetic, the greater theme is coming home to love and togetherness, and that's what the Caribbean Festival is all about. It's really to draw Canada into the Caribbean culture.
Yeah, it certainly is, and so many people love to be a part of it. I'm still stuck on the fact that those costumes are 400 pounds. Anam, go pick one up.
I know. I'll try.
All right, thank you, Anam. Anam Con reporting at Exhibition Place. And we are flying into a break now, but first, this is the Italian Air Force overhead our city today, performing a flyover along the waterfront. It's the first time the Italian group has graced our skies in 40 years. We're on a quick break. We'll be right back. The popular Laro Kidstown water park in Scarborough has been closed this summer. Tough news during these sweltering temperatures, but the city gave an update this morning.
This iconic destination is now beyond its lifespan, and I just checked the beam on that old structure. It has rotted out. So we are transforming this place for generations to come.
Still a bit of a womp-womp for some of us. The park will remain closed off for the rest of the year as the place gets a facelift. But once it is done, it'll be double the size with new splash pads, pools, and a bigger parking lot. The $21 million project is expected to be completed by next summer. Chris Potter joining us now with a look at weather. And I bet the mayor and all those other people that were at that event today. We're hoping to be in water because it is just so hot out there today.
And the heat warning does indeed continue, Chris, and it will likely last through tonight. It might actually be dropped by tomorrow, but it's still in place across the Golden Horseshoe with daytime highs around 30, feeling as high as almost 40, overnight lows, which is the criteria of 20 or above. We're still going to hit that criteria tonight, but by tomorrow it will be slightly cooler, especially with the presence of cloud cover and more organized rainfall potential. So with that comes a little bit of relief. But at the moment, temperatures are still anywhere from 25 in Kitchener over to Oshawa at 30, 28 right now in the city as well as Mississauga, still feeling like the mid to upper 30s, 40 right now in Hamilton. And in terms of active weather, the GTA escaped with just a brief little area of showers that moved through late morning. For the rest of the afternoon, it's been dry. Area of thunderstorms continue to move towards Lake Ontario. It fizzled out very quickly, but we still have some active weather moving in through Kitchener, very slow moving storm cells with some obviously lightning. So the best place to go indoors, that's where you should go because with this heavy rainfall potential, localized flooding or at least ponding pooling will be possible, but it's highly localized. It's not widespread. Obviously, we're not seeing that right now across the GTA. So what we will see as we head through tomorrow afternoon is a little bit of rainfall. It's going to be dry through the overnight, but as we get into the day tomorrow, late morning, we'll start to see some rainfall kind of lifting in across Niagara. Hamilton gets into it first, then Mississauga. It's not going to be a washout day, but like I said, Chris, it's going to be a little bit cooler and more comfortable. I have daytime highs around 27 to 28, feeling maybe like 35, 36, not a washout. 29 for you on Saturday, mostly cloudy. It looks dry. Dry weather prevails on Sunday as temperatures climb back towards 31. Lots of sunshine again on Monday after a weak cold front moves through Sunday night. We get into fresher conditions with a high near normal at 27, then 24 for us on Tuesday, Chris.
Just got to get through those sweltering temperatures first. All right, thank you, Chris.
You got it.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for joining. We'll be back